If a man is valuable enough, all he needs to do is see lightning and hear thunder. This is the story of a man who not only saw lightning and heard thunder, but a man who created his own lightning and burst forth with his own brand of thunder, Admiral Ben Moreell, father of the Seabees. December 7th, 1941. Newspaper headlines throughout the world rang out the devastating news. U.S. reels from attack on Pearl Harbor. America enters World War II. We were finally a part of the inevitable. That attack triggered another chain of events. Events which led to the formation of a unique branch of the U.S. Armed Forces, the Navy Seabees. It didn't happen overnight. The concept had been forming for quite a while in the mind of a man who, through his great insight, talent, and undying love for his country, created a legacy of determination and know-how. A military construction force which lived by the creed, we build, we fight. You know the impressive wartime achievements and contributions made by the fighting builders of the Naval Construction Battalions, the Seabees, but that's a story for another time. Today I want to tell you about the man who made it all happen. A man who, through his genius and willingness to overcome numerous obstacles, fired the fierce loyalty for the country he held so dear. Morell was born in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1892. At the age of 4, he and his family moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where he spent most of his childhood. Young Ben displayed natural leadership at an early age. His scholastic record shows a superb student, a quick mind, an insightful observer, a creator, a doer. An honor student through his years at Central High School, Morell entered Washington University in St. Louis, majoring in a rigorous civil engineering program. His compulsion to succeed in every undertaking is exemplified by his athletic accomplishments at Washington University. This article, which appeared in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, underscores the determination of a driven man. A marvelously good showing by Ben Moreell, a fullback for the Washington University 11 this fall, proved a pleasant sensation for the Pikeway rooters. Great as an end, but even more brilliant as a fullback, never lost his head, and succeeded in imparting a measure of his cool-headedness to his mates. The queerest point in Morell's record is the fact that he never played football or took part in any branch of athletics during his 4 years at Central High School. 1917. Morell's professional abilities were in demand in the civilian arena, but Morell needed more of a challenge, and he was tempted by a competitive exam for naval commissions. Thousands of men took the test for only a handful of available positions, but Ben, fueled by his competitive nature and his fierce patriotic feelings, was awarded a prized commission, Lieutenant Junior grade in the Naval Civil Engineer Corps. In Officers Candidate School, Ben Moreell met another young Civil Engineer Corps officer. The two were to begin a friendship that would last for more than 60 years. Together, they spanned 2 world wars, enjoyed successful military careers, and built a rare and trusting relationship. The man's name was Louis Combs.
After we were commissioned, Ben was ordered for duty to the Azores during World War I. I was ordered for duty to the Washington Navy Yard, the Naval Gun Factory. We didn't see much of each other from then on until about 1920, when we were both ordered for duty to the Republic of Haiti. Ben, we were attached to the Marine Brigade, and Ben was ordered as executive officer of a group of civil engineer officers, and I was a field officer. We were both bachelors at the time and lived with a group of other officers in a BOQ in Port-au-Prince.
When he returned to the States, Morell wrestled with a tremendous conflict. He was thinking about resigning from the Navy and returning to civilian life. Uncertain about his future, he confided in his friend Louis Combs.
Ben advised me that he was considering resigning from the service. We discussed it at length.
Combs worked his magic on Morell. He decided to stay.
I feel that if I convinced him to stay in for a career, that I had made a major contribution to the Navy in general and the Civil Engineer Corps in particular.
Morell wasted no time in building a reputation as an engineering genius. While assigned to the Public Works Department in Norfolk, he published the first of many books he was to write during his career. The title, Standards of Design for Concrete, the book became a standard for construction and reinforced Morell's reputation as an expert in his field. In 1932, he received a unique assignment, study under duty at the prestigious École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées in Paris. There, he learned a great deal about European design and construction techniques. But he also obtained invaluable knowledge of the political tenor of Europe. Change was in the air. Hitler was beginning to surface as a leader. Europe was gearing up for international confrontation. Morell observed closely and knew that this would soon mean war. From that time on, every plan that Morell was to institute for the Navy had its roots in the preparation for war. Morell returned to the States in 1933, where he found America still reeling from the effects of the Great Depression. He was made Assistant Design Manager for the Bureau of Yards and Docks, where he supervised the design of the David Taylor ship model testing basins. He was quickly promoted to Project Manager for shipbuilding and repair facilities for the Bureau, and a short time later, he was sent to Pearl Harbor as Public Works Officer until 1937. Morell remembered his observations from his year in Europe and his renewed insights from a European vacation he took in 1936. And history was proving him right. Crisis and rivalry were rampant in Europe and Asia. By now, everyone was caught up in the atmosphere of international tension.
I think that everyone was convinced that we were going to be drawn into the war in some way or another. And I think that everyone in the Navy Department was thinking that way.
And so was President Roosevelt. Roosevelt felt the naval forces needed a shot in the arm, right at the top. Aware of Morell's reputation, the president took a liking to the young junior commander. In 1937, in a move unprecedented in naval history, the president personally authorized Morell's promotion from commander to rear admiral, skipping the rank of captain. This promotion enabled Morell to be named chief of the Navy's Bureau of Yards and Docks. Rear Admiral Morell recognized the poor condition of the Navy's fleet and the need to build it up and expand it in the event our national defenses should be in jeopardy. A few key members of Congress, attuned to the pattern of conflict erupting abroad, concurred. In May of 1938, Representative Carl Vinson, chairman of the House Naval Affairs Committee, proposed a bill to provide a 20% increase in the number of ships, along with authorization to build 3,000 new planes. During committee hearings, testimony revealed that existing naval air facilities could not handle the proposed expansion and construction. Morell was instrumental in exposing that fact.
Of all the naval officers who went up to the Hill prior to and during the war, none of them had the wallop and prestige that Ben Moreell did, particularly with the Naval Affairs Committee under Carl Vinson.
The result of Vinson's committee hearings was the formation of the Hepburn Board, set up to report on the need for additional naval and air bases on U.S. coasts, territories, and possessions to ensure a secure national defense.
The General Board of the Navy Department had been studying the development of air bases in the Pacific prior to the war in the 30s, and Ben Moreell and the Bureau of Yards and Docks were closely involved in this study.
1939, Germany struck the first blow. All of Europe was in a state of shock. What had been feared for so long had come to pass. Morell was more convinced than ever that expansion of naval bases had to begin immediately in preparation for America's inevitable involvement and protection. He immediately drafted a memorandum to Secretary of the Navy Charles Edison. It emphasized the urgency to begin expansion post-haste.
The Navy Department at that time was pretty much run by a group of old, tough line admirals. And they didn't think too much of a young commander in the Civil Engineer Corps coming in there and taking over.
Edison and the Congress authorized the Bureau of Yards and Docks, under its chief Ben Moreell, to devise plans for existing and future needs in the event of war.
That's one of the great things about Ben Moreell, not only his ability, but his personality. And he did win all those fellows over, right up to Admiral King himself.
It was difficult to get contractors to bid on construction projects in those days because nobody wanted to be locked into a bid that could wind up losing money due to unforeseen problems. Morell was instrumental in initiating a new policy known as Cost Plus. He convinced the Congress to approve a contract policy whereby a contractor would be reimbursed for his expenditures plus receive an additional percentage as profit. In 1939, contracts were awarded to American contractors using skilled civilian labor. As Morell expected, Cost Plus made these contractors eager to do work for the Navy. Priority was placed on building bases in Hawaii, Alaska, and Puerto Rico, remote places far from civilization. This proved to be a far different construction challenge than the American contractors were used to back home. Conditions were brutal for civilian personnel who performed their jobs under the administrative direction of Navy officers in charge of construction. By the summer of 1941, large naval bases were under construction on Guam, Midway, Wake, Pearl Harbor, and many other islands in the Pacific. America was gearing up for war, and back home, industry was feeling the pressure of pre-war expansion. Skilled laborers with all types of vocational backgrounds were being hired to meet the frenzied construction demands at home. It was becoming more and more difficult to entice Americans to leave the security of their job in the States to go to Morell's faraway outpost to contribute to the war effort. He began to see the need for a new type of military unit, one that would supplement the requirements of the civilian contractors who were frantically readying the bases in the Pacific. He needed builders and fighters in one. In Morell's masterful mind, the idea behind the Seabees was taking shape. He set about devising a means of organizing skilled construction units made up of rated enlisted men. These construction units, known as headquarters construction companies, were authorized in October of 1941. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. America was formally at war. It quickly became clear that civilian contractors and their employees could not work in combat zones for two very valid reasons. One, they didn't have the training that military men had to defend themselves. And two, even if they did, they were forbidden from doing so under international military law. It was unlawful for civilians to resist attack because if they did so and they were captured with weapons, they were summarily executed. Construction forces were paralyzed by early Japanese victories at Cavite, Guam, and Wake Island. All the evidence Morell needed to request military-trained construction personnel.
The concept is not new, but the organization is definitely new. In other words, the recruitment and organization of construction men for naval construction in shore facilities is definitely new. And the thing that crystallized it was what happened at Wake Island. We had been discussing this in the Bureau for a long time and were prepared for it when it happened.
This was Ben Morell's desk at the Bureau of Yards and Docks. From this desk, on December 28, 1941, Morell made the formal request for the establishment of construction battalions. On January 5, 1942, the Seabees were born. Morell designed each construction battalion to be self-sufficient. Every trade, vocation, and avocation was included. All told, the Seabees represented more than 60 different trades. Morell recognized the necessity of having these newly formed battalions commanded by military officers who spoke their language, officers who understood construction. Until now, only line officers had command authority. Morell knew in order to get the optimum performance from his newly formed Seabees, this had to change. He personally took his idea to the Secretary of the Navy, and 2 months later, the Secretary granted approval for Navy Civil Engineer Corps officers to exercise command authority over all officers and enlisted men assigned to construction units. Hence, Morell's amazing foresight lifted a major roadblock to Seabee operations. Morell's next challenge was to attract the multitude of skilled men needed for the giant tasks ahead. He wanted men trained in the construction trades, but he knew a special incentive would be required to get these men to leave good-paying jobs at home. True to form, Morell came up with a plan. He would offer these construction men petty officer ratings commensurate to their civilian construction experience. His plan was enthusiastically approved.
Ben Moreell had very excellent relationships with all of the labor union leaders. And I think that that relationship, together with the inducement of advance ratings, enabled us to get some of the best men from the construction industry into the Seabees.
These men were eager to put their expertise to use in the military. Men who wanted to make their contributions to the war effort. They were older, wiser, experienced men of every race, creed, color, and station in life. Unlike the majority of men fighting the war in other branches of military service, the average age of Morell's Seabees was 33. Thus, the mature image of the construction forces began to take shape. Morell's vision was a reality. Through perseverance, genius, and a masterful plan, Morell's Seabees were ready to play a significant role in the stunning victory of the United States in World War II. The Seabees took part in every amphibious operation conducted by the Navy, Army, and Marines during the Second World War. This was a war in which bases would be as important as bullets, and Morell's fighting construction battalions performed construction miracles. Early in the war off the coast of Africa, the Seabees conceived and built a new weapon, the steel pontoon. This versatile magic box enabled the Seabees to provide landing support to the military forces on the invasion beaches of Sicily. These new pontoons enabled the Allies to pull off a surprise attack on the poorly defended Sicilian beaches. The same landing support was employed successfully again at Salerno and Anzio. The Seabees worked their unique brand of magic in the Pacific as well by developing the floating dry dock. This seafaring repair facility enabled crippled ships to be repaired at sea, thus eliminating the precious time that would otherwise be required for ships to return to port. During World War II, the Seabees performed astounding feats in the Atlantic and Pacific, on 4 continents, on 300 islands, at a cost of nearly $11 billion, toil, sweat, and sacrifice. No job was too tough for the Seabees to handle, hence their motto, which is with them today, can do. At their maximum strength, the Seabees numbered 258,000. It was a testimony to their can-do accomplishments that General MacArthur said to Morell, "The only trouble with your Seabees is, I don't have enough of them." It was Morell's driving force and ambition that fired the Seabees, and it was his fierce love for his country that fired Morell.
He was not a very effervescent sort of a fellow, but still, he was very forceful. And anyone who was associated with Ben Moreell for a while knew they could always depend on him. He had a high sense of integrity and honesty. And these are the things that won him a great deal of admiration and loyalty.
And loyalty is what he gave to his men and to his country. His excellent leadership and professional skill earned his program the label, the single greatest construction project in the history of the world. Morell was promoted to 4-star admiral in 1946, the first non-Annapolis man to achieve that esteemed rank. Today, a memorial to Ben Moreell stands at the Naval Academy. It was designed by the internationally renowned sculptor Felix de Weldon. Known for his famous Iwo Jima Memorial and for his bronze relief Seabees Memorial, de Weldon, a former Seabee himself, reflects on his experiences with Morell.
I remember when Admiral Ben Moreell came to my studio to pose for his bust. He was a quiet man who possessed an incredible inner strength. His mind was constantly in action. Ben Moreell was also a great human being, a man who genuinely loved his fellow man. He had a rare combination of humility, strength, authority, leadership, as well as compassion.
Admiral Morell retired from active duty in 1946. Not one to rest on his military laurels, he entered private industry, first as president of the Turner Construction Company of New York, and then in 1947 as president, chief executive officer, and chairman of the board of Jones & Laughlin Steel Corporation of Pittsburgh. He relinquished the presidency in 1952, but he remained as chief executive officer until 1957 and as chairman of the board until 1958, when he gave up all his executive duties and entered private practice as a business and economic consultant. During this time, Morell authored several books on such diverse subjects as civil engineering, management, military insight, and modern-day society. In 1958, along with former Secretary Edison, he formed the ACA, the Americans for Constitutional Action. Admiral Morell received numerous awards and citations during his distinguished career, as well as a dozen honorary degrees from American colleges and universities. His military awards include the Navy's Distinguished Service Medal with Gold Star, the Legion of Merit, and the Order of the British Empire. But perhaps the single greatest tribute to Admiral Ben Moreell are the continuing efforts and achievements of the fighting construction battalions he founded, the U.S. Navy Seabees, the men and women who in time of war and time of peace continue to work in the can-do tradition that spurred on their leader.
I think that all young officers and enlisted men who become members of the construction forces of the United States Navy can benefit greatly by studying the part which Admiral Ben Moreell played in the conception, organization, and development of the naval construction forces, now commonly known as the Seabees.
In June 1950, the Seabees were at war again, this time in South Korea. Battling 30-foot waves, swift currents, and enemy fire, they positioned pontoon causeways within hours of the first assault for what was to become known as one of the most brilliant amphibious assaults in history. After the Korean War, the Seabees built and expanded scientific bases in the frozen reaches of Antarctica as part of the Bird Expedition. They also assumed the role of disaster relief force, became involved in local military aid and socio-economic projects in underdeveloped countries, and taught construction skills to people in Africa, Central and South America, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. Vietnam again turned the Seabees' attentions to war. Their staggering accomplishments included supporting the Marines at Chu Lai and Khe Sanh, constructing a new naval base on a sand pad floating on a rice paddy, building incredible numbers of warehouses, aircraft support facilities, roads and bridges, and providing medical treatment to thousands of villagers. All this was done at a price. The first Congressional Medal of Honor winner during Vietnam was construction mechanic third class Marvin G. Shields, a Seabee. Shields was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously for defending his comrades under heavy fire at Dong Xoai in June of 1965. The Seabees gave hope and opportunity to generations of Vietnamese through Seabee-built schools and roads and hospitals and other community facilities. And they taught the Vietnamese people construction skills so that they themselves could build for peace. At work throughout the world today, in places which reach from Greece to Guam, Spain to Taiwan, England to Puerto Rico, the Seabees continue to undertake many peacetime projects, such as the development and construction of a naval communications station on Diego Garcia, a coral atoll in the Indian Ocean. All of these accomplishments are possible today because of the vision of one man, Admiral Ben Moreell. Perhaps the quote that best describes his contributions is contained on the citation to the Distinguished Service Medal he received in 1945. It reads, "Displaying great originality and exceptional capacity for bold innovation, Morell inspired in his subordinates a degree of loyalty and devotion to duty outstanding in the naval service, to the end that the fleet received support in degree and kind unprecedented in the history of naval warfare." At the dedication of the Morell Wing at the Seabee Museum, a reporter asked Morell what was his most prized possession. He replied, "My country's flag." Ben Moreell died on July 30th, 1978 at the age of 85. The Seabee Museum here at Port Hueneme is a living monument to a man who did in fact dedicate his life to his country's flag. Through his tireless efforts, Ben Moreell made the United States of America and the world a better place for all mankind.